All right, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Dunn County Legislative Committee to order at our meeting Wednesday, April 9th, 2025, 3 p.m. in room 60 of the Dunn County Government Center. Our first order of business is call to order, which I just did. The next order of business is call of the roll. And if our county manager would check that out for me, I think we're all here but one. Is that correct? Okay. Next order of business is item 3, the approval of the minutes from the March 12th, 2025 meeting. I assume you've all had a chance to read them. Are there any corrections or explanations or hearing none? I would entertain a motion and a second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? I think I got that right. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Public comments. I'm not aware of any. Are you, county manager? All right, thank you. No public comments. Number 5, items placed at the request of the chair of the Wisconsin Counties Association update. I just want to touch briefly on that. The last time we met was March 14th over in Green Bay. Interesting meeting. The order of business was, well, of course, Brown County gave us a nice welcome and boosted their Packer draft day this month over there. And then what we did, we got a legislative report from Kyle Christensen. We had a report from Mark O'Connell, president. Got a report of our national county director, and then report of forward analytics. And then the new Secretary of Transportation, Christina Boardman, spoke to us, introduced herself, and that was interesting. And then our association issues, 13A, consideration of chair's appointment to the resolutions committee, consideration of chair's appointment to the audit committee, consideration of appointment of public finance, and then it was a consideration of the 2025-27 state biennial budget. And what they do is they give you everything that's in the budget, and they give the Wisconsin counties opinion on whether we should support, disapprove, or monitor. And so we went through every all 112 items in the budget. So that in itself is kind of time consuming, but it's interesting. And so and that's basically how things go. Our meeting goes usually from 8 in the morning till about 12 or 1, and then we conduct our business that way. So is there any questions on what I briefly described there? It's interesting to note that of the 72 counties in Wisconsin, the only county that's not a member of the Wisconsin Counties Association is Dane County. Quite interesting, you know. You wonder why. Some political back and forth there, I should think. Okay, our next order of business today is consideration of reports, resolution, ordinance to the county board from the legislative committee. The resolution supporting increased base funding for county conservation. Now, you should have a copy in your packet. Hopefully you had a chance to read it. It's self-explanatory, I think. I would entertain any questions or explanations, and between me and Kelly, we'll try to answer them for you. Oh, yeah, I see. Didn't mean to overlook you there, Chase. How would I overlook a guy 6'4" in the first place? Okay. Any questions? Any explanations needed? Everybody had a chance to preview it again, I think. If not, then I would entertain a motion and a second to approve moving it forward. We have Board Member Kinnear and Board Member Helen. We have a first and a second. Now we'll open it up for discussion, which is met with deathly silence. So, yes, go ahead. Supervisor Quinn.
Could I ask Chase, I think it might be helpful to have just a bit of an explanation.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you Supervisor Quinn for doing my
You're very
job for
welcome.
me. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I appreciate the entertaining this topic of this discussion. Certainly in the resolution, it talks about the value that land and water conservation departments bring across the state of Wisconsin. I probably could provide a little more background on the history of the funding and what it actually does and what it looks like when it comes to the county. So since the early 2000s, roughly around 2005, 2006, through state statute chapter 92, has a statement in there that the state of Wisconsin shall attempt to fund an average of 3 positions in every county to implement land and water conservation type activities, particularly activities that are passed by the state legislature that are handed down to the counties for them to administer, like agriculture performance standards and prohibitions and other soil and water type activities. Key words in that statement of the statute is shall attempt, and part of that is the funding formula for those 3 positions. So it shall attempt to fund an average of 3 positions with 100% going towards the first position, 70% going towards a second position, 50% going towards the third position, and then 50% going to any additional positions that a county may employ. Since the inception of that funding formula has never been fully funded. And certainly in my entire career so far, it has not even funded a full first and second position. So as it sits right now for Dunn County, we receive funding at 100% of the first position, which is technically my position in the division. And then we receive 70% of the required 70% funding of the second position. And we receive no funding for the remaining of the positions that we have. This resolution is support of Wisconsin Counties Association is also on board with this, and our Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association, of which we are members of, is advocating for this as well. And this is to fully fund the base funding of conservation needs for all counties in the state. And that's where the 20.2 million comes in. So this would be those funds or that request would be put in the state legislature a budget package to hit the base funding for that 170, 50, and all 50% of any additional positions. So, typically, as you can imagine, there's many different budget priorities in the state. This isn't always come to the forefront or made a huge priority. It has received much more attention in the last few years, and I think this year is probably one of the greatest attentions that have been paid to it, particularly with the Wisconsin Counties Association. So, I think it's a good thing. I think it would bring benefit to Dunn County specifically to help support the activities that we do. But I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have on it.
Yeah, Chase, did I understand you correctly? The second position, they only fund 70% of the 70%.
That's correct. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Does anybody on the committee here have any questions of Chase? If so, Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you. Chase, let's just assume that we got this money. How would that affect us here in Dunn County?
So it's going to be dependent on what the legislature and the budget actually says. So when this topic has come before the legislature in the past, it was, I guess, statements made in a desire by the legislature to be a maintenance of effort. Meaning, if we, for example, have $700,000 from our county levy that support the land and water conservation activities in the county, we would be required, or it was intended at that time, to maintain that effort. So if this additional money was to come in, we're at this point in time, in this current proposal, we're not certain what the legislature would require, whether that would be, we could offset our levy expense, or if we would have to maintain that levy contribution and then apply these additional funds to whatever that might be, if that's additional staff for some counties or for us, to support programs, other activities. It could be other funding mechanisms to support the installation of conservation practices. I'm not certain at this moment what the details of that would look like, but it could be a scenario such as that.
So it wouldn't have to go towards salaries?
Yes, it would have to go towards salaries, but if we could offset salaries with our levy dollars could be, while we're potentially maintaining the effort of conservation, those levy dollars that would have went to salaries before could be put towards other programming and still be viewed as maintaining the effort in the eyes of the legislature. At least that's what it was the last biennium we went around with this. So
So you wouldn't see additional staff?
potentially, I guess it would depend on what we as a local priority felt we needed to do.
Thank you.
Certainly some counties would benefit from additional staff. Not saying we wouldn't, but
Chase, if I'm understanding what you're saying, it would appear to me that I'm sure the legislature's idea was they do not want their money to replace our money. So I'm going to hazard a guess, and perhaps Chairman McCullough could delve a little further into this, but I'm going to say that they would not, we'd have to spend the same amount of money that we currently spend to get, even though we get the additional money. Does that make sense to everyone? Because I'm sure that they do not want the state money to supplant our money, is what I'm gonna. And
that was the intent at the last time they.
And I'm sure,
proposed this, yeah.
unless they feel very generous, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be that way. Any comment there, Supervisor McCullough?
Yeah, it'd probably depend on, well, A, if they put the maintenance of effort clause in, but how they phrase it. So if the maintenance of effort is a dollar figure, then, then the net impact is we have those dollars to spend elsewhere. If the maintenance of effort is more like the maintenance of effort clause that they put in for law enforcement, then it's number of people employed. So we would need to maintain the number of people employed, and then we would have a little bit more freedom with that money. So there are three possible outcomes depending on how the clause is written, whether it's in.
And if I could just add one more comment, when this topic has come before the state budget in the past, the legislature has, to give them credit, has come through with some additional funding, but it's been one-time funding in each year of the biennium, which then at the end of the biennium, we start over, and the uncertainty is difficult, especially for many counties to try to absorb that or to plan for that. So this request is a specific ask to the base, an addition of funding to the base to maintain that. So we don't get into those one-time funding scenarios.
It would be an ongoing contribution.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Chairman McCullough, for your, any other questions of Chase? Hearing none, I believe we have a motion and a second. We just had our discussion. If there is no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. The only other order of business I have here is Andrew Murcell and myself received a correspondence from Mark O'Connell, the County Board President and CEO of the WCA. The WCA Annual Conference will be held September 21st, 23rd, 2025 in Sauk County. It's the annual business meeting resolutions, and the deadline for submitting any resolutions that we would like them to take up in their business, the deadline for submission is 4:30 on June 23rd, 2025. And Chairman McCullough and I had a brief conversation before the meeting. I'm not sure if this applies to all of our legislative wants, or if it's some other wants that we want from the county, but I could use guidance maybe from County Manager, Corpola or Dan Dunbar. I guess to be on the safe side, I would urge our committees to go, or the committee chairs to go back to their committees, and get whatever legislative items that you want to be included in our ask, so to speak. And then my intent would be we'd come back in our May exec meeting and we would be able to move forward because we'd want to make a resolution to send to the county board, which we could then send to the May board meeting, which would then hopefully be adopted, and then we would be in a position to send our resolutions in plenty of time to beat the submission deadline. Is there any, it's kind of sketchy, but is there any questions? So that's what I would task you with then, is talk to your committees, get your legislative resolutions lined up. Be ready to bring them to the May meeting we'll have a legislative meeting in May. We'll adopt it, assume, we'll adopt it, then we'll send it on to the May board meeting. And then we'll be able to orderly send our requests in.
Can I seek just a bit of clarification?
Yes.
So
ma'am.
you, the departments updated their legislative agenda for the county, updated those late in 2024. And that is all done and in a final form. So I'm not certain of this, and maybe you could comment if this is true. I'm assuming that WCA is looking for those broader reaching initiatives that would cover kind of statewide, not just we want to build whatever, the Taj Mahal in Dunn County, but I don't know, that, the typical things, roads and bridges and Madison County. All of those sorts of things. Is that a fair, I mean, because we would have nothing, we would be able to turn over our legislative agenda immediately, but I don't think that's what you're asking for.
No, and I thank you for the question, and I don't have a crystal clear answer. I'll have to get a hold of the WCA and see exactly what they mean. Sheriff, go ahead.
So my understanding is this would be if you have something that you would like to see added to the WCA's legislative agenda as a resolution, as opposed to our own legislative agenda. So things that,
So like Terry Nichols' request around technical college funding.
right, or the broader WCA request for greater court funding. So that there's already a court funding resolution within the packet, so we wouldn't necessarily need to do that, but it would be that sort of item.
Uh, I'm glad you brought up Mr. Nichols, because I was somewhat at a loss. He wondered what had happened to his resolution. And Chairman McCullough was kind enough, if it's adopted by the Wisconsin Counties Association, it doesn't go away. It's in their ask, but they go through and prioritize what they're going to ask for. And that didn't make the top 4 or 5 or whatever, but just so in case you get asked, it's still in there. But, they prioritize what they want to ask for. So, and generally speaking, they don't want to lose all their gunpowder on a broad deal. They'd rather concentrate on 2 or 3 or 4 things where they have more hope of getting them passed. So with that, any other questions on my rather disjointed discussion about this? If not, we've concluded our business, and I'd say that we are adjourned. Thank you all for showing up and being healthy.
All right.
Goodbye, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are.
So since we have this agended properly, that we can just roll right on into exec, I'm going to go ahead and call the executive committee meeting to order. Call of roll shows that all members are present. Approval of the minutes for March 12th. You've got the minutes. I would need them if there are any clarifying questions. If not, I would need a motion in a second. Supervisor Steen moves. Supervisor Morehouse seconds. Any speaking to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Hi.
Minutes are approved. Public comments, I don't have any. Chris, did anything come in? Andrew? Okay, Andrew's gone, so I'm guessing not. All right, closing public comments, county managers report. Chris, over to you.
Okay, I was gonna send this message to Dan, but Dan, can you find Jim's stuff for him to bring up? He sent it as an email, so you don't have to do it, but I mean, don't. Okay, so, first thing, okay, so just kind of to put this in your brains, there are 3 things going on. Well, I'm sorry, there are 2 things going on. I lie, hold on. There are 3 things going on. So at 4 PM next Wednesday, the 16th, Kelly, Gary, and Vaughn will review county manager applications. At 5:30, the CIP workshop of the county board will commence. And then at 7 o'clock will be the regular county board meeting. And Andrew is working on getting pizza so that those that have to be here for the duration or have to skip dinner in order to be here on time will be able to grab a bite to eat. So just to kind of put that in your brain schedule so that people understand what's happening. So first thing that'll happen then is we'll do the CIP workshop. I would preempt the discussion a tiny bit to just say our CIP requests are about $1.5 million this year. 760,000 of that is the engineering costs for a highway storage building. So I think the rest of the things are, I don't want to say that they're inexpensive, but they're 30,000 here and 40,000 there and whatever that add up to that difference. So just so that you're prepared for the substance of the discussion will likely be around deciding about moving forward on a building project with highway, because it doesn't pay to spend $760,000 if we're never going to build a building. So just so you're kind of aware of what that's likely to look like. And then let's see what else is going on for the county board. Dan is gonna run through today, a update or a kind of a tutorial on fire and EMS. Some of you have heard that in committees, but it has enough life that I think that it's good for everyone to be aware of what's moving in that world or what some of the decisions are that will come forward potentially in the future regarding that. Well, Register of Deeds, Dunn County Housing Authority, and the Veteran Service Office, some budget adjustments, and then the resolution on land and water conservation funding and the recognition of Work Zone Awareness Week. So it will be, I think, outside of the, because we're starting early, I tried to keep the agenda lighter because it will be a long enough evening with the CIP discussion anyway. So pretty straightforward. Any questions about that?
Is it gonna be noticed in such a way that we can move, in case we would get done early on the CIP, move right into the county board meeting?
I think I did that. Yep, county board meeting to begin immediately after.
Okay, thank you.
So we can keep going. Okay. Beata, I don't think I've been told her I was gonna do this, but Beata, can you do a quick update on the work that you're doing regarding fiscal policies, financial policies?
Thank you for having me. We've did a lot of work with our policies. And those policies were triggered, again, a combination of things. And one of them, most importantly, it was from our auditors. So then we prioritize based on risk and what needed to come forward first. And I believe what's in front of you, it's just a CIP.
They
one.
don't, yeah, they just have CIP.
Yeah, you just have the capital improvement one. Do you want me to discuss all the others or?
Well, you can let them know which ones, if you recall which ones there are, but
No, I don't.
okay. It doesn't matter.
I even forget, my day, I was at a medical appointment this morning and I got here right after it and I'm still think it's 9 o'clock because that's when usually I get to work. But some of the ones that from my memory, we did a P-card policy was one of them. And this again resulted from our audit, not findings, but observations on some missing receipts. We also completed full training. So everybody that has a P card or is involved in the P card process was invited was in mandatory training, had the opportunity to come. And we also did a recording that's available. So moving forward, anybody that gets a P card is required to complete this training. Then the other one was
Budget?
the budget.
Yep.
So the budget policy also kind of highlighted responsibilities, roles, how we're going to navigate our budget process. We didn't do any, I have about 30 of them and about 20 of them are done. The rest of them are in the draft mode. So I apologize if my memory isn't triggering exactly. But the one that you have in front of you is the CIP. This again came to surface simply because we were just around a corner with our CIP. But we wanted to set this policy to identify some of those perimeters. And one of them is, what is a CIP item? In the past, I don't think there was lack of clarity as to what is a CIP eligible and how they're being treated. So Chris and I had multiple conversations and we were able to define what the CIP is and also be able to define is, in the definitions is a CIP, we're going to say if it's $100,000 or more, big ticket items. So that's like putting a roof, renovating, building, those types of things. But then we know that there are other departments that are asking for other items that are not necessarily $100,000 or involved building or renovating and such. So we'll have, for example, like squad cars. So we put perimeters around that if that cost of those squad cars is, I don't have the policy, but speaking from memory again, which is not serving me right today. So the other criteria was if it's squad cars, is it 7%? Where does it fit with their overall budget? Is it a one-time type of a purchase, not a reoccurring operating type of a purchase? And the third item was for those smaller departments that cannot absorb in their budget, but are, again, not 100, because they could be less than 100 or could not meet that 7%, but then yet they don't have any other funding source for it. So they're coming and ask for the funding source, whichever will be decided at the CIP approval process. So that was important to identify that criteria so that our management are all on the same page and we're consistently going to then use this policy to maintain our CIP plan.
And we just included it because it's probably the one that's most relevant to the work that's coming forward to the board now. But it has, the process has been approved by the committee administration, which would be the responsible entity for that particular policy. And as Beata indicated, our process was a bit mushy because capital improvements have a fairly straightforward definition in the sense of, as Beata said, building, renovating, constructing. But we kind of lumped everything that was over a $10,000 purchase into that. And sometimes either they can be budgeted in a general operating budget because they are a one-time observable cost, and or they don't need to be there's another funding source. So for instance, if one of the things that was in the capital improvement plan would come up in the capital improvement plan would be things that we already, like the
Highway.
Right. Equipment replacement, there's already a funding source for that. You should be aware of it, but it's not a decision that has to be made because there is already funding for it. So we tried to clean that up a little bit so it was clear for departments as well as for the board as to what the requests were that were coming forward to them. Any questions about that?
And the most recent policy, we also did ACH.
Today?
Well, there's a couple ACH. There's ACH how we pay vendor via electronic way. And then there's a policy on how we're then the customers for somebody else that gets paid ACH. So that's what we went through today. So, but we rolled out the ACH onboarding, so policy. So this is a policy where a vendor that we pay has the option of getting paid electronically versus a check. So we've created a policy to set perimeters around how we're going to navigate that environment and given its risk. Dual verification, it outlines how we going to achieve that. We also we partner up with our bank, so we're working on some other solutions that will help to kind of streamline. But the other one we did was a carry forward. Carry forward was another item that was kind of one of those that I even was confused because a lot of people would submit carry forwards and you ask the question, it's like, well, is it an item that should be carried forward? So we define that in that policy as well. And that's something that is a county manager approved. Because it's a finance kind of function. Anything else?
Thanks.
Mhm.
So kudos to Beata for the work that she's doing on bringing us into some written documentation for guidance for those going forward on some of those important issues. And then lastly, I would invite Dan up to do a presentation about fire and EMS planning. And again, apologies to those of you who have heard this before, but I know not everyone has.
And you've probably seen a lot of the slides too, because I would say I stole them, but I told Garrett I was going to do that. So, and he approved. So, but I did change some colors, but you will see the University of Wisconsin logo in the corner because, well, I didn't have time to get rid of it. So yeah, so Chris had asked me to do this presentation actually when I was at a conference in an EMS breakout session. I don't even know if you knew that's where I was when I received the message. So it is a topic that is both state and national issue. So something that's been coming up recently, and it's been to a few of our different committees. So I can hit the next page. So just to be clear, as we talk about EMS and fire, sometimes they get bulked together. They're two different things. And the bulk of the work that happens is actually in the EMS world. So the ambulance response type work. So you can see the statistics here. I could read through them, but 18,000 fire incidents responded to annually, 1 million ambulance runs. So there's a major difference as you talk about the amount of responses that have to happen between those two different areas. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through all of this, and I might just call it all EMS, but EMS and fire are two different things in the statutes and in how they're funded and everything. So state statute, Wisconsin towns. So Wisconsin towns shall, bad slide, shall contract or operate and maintain ambulance services unless such services are provided by another person. Familiar with reading statutes, shall means must. So towns don't have a choice in contracting or providing these types of services. Same is true with fire, just different ways that they can go about that. Cities and villages, the standard changes a little bit. We get the mays that come in there, but this is where villages and cities have the ability to essentially create their own entity as opposed to becoming a part of a district and items like that. So I know everybody loves to read statutes. much as Jim does, but we'll skip through that unless you want me to read them to you. Maintenance of effort, funny that this had come up earlier. I'm sitting there saying, yeah, Kelly, I have a slide that'll tell you exactly what that is. So maintenance of effort is something that's been around, but Act 12 in 2023 is something that really substantiated that. And I think amongst this committee, we have talked about that before, in that we are not allowed to necessarily make a reduction in the services that are provided that qualify under law enforcement, fire, and EMS. So just something to kind of keep in mind. And this is something that is true for the towns and villages in the county as well. So this is kind of where some of that problem is like, it's a mandate. You don't get to decrease that. So it takes away a little bit of their flexibility in how they can manage that. We must provide it. Costs are going up, but we can't actually reduce that service. So we have to be able to absorb those costs in some other way. This is a really fun map. So this is EMS providers in Dunn County. So we have 2 career ambulance departments. So City of Eau Claire's ambulance department covers, that's that little purple section down in the corner is where Eau Claire comes in. Menominee actually shows up in the 2 shades of green in the middle there. They're separated between the 2 stations, but that's all Menominee Fire and Rescue. And then you get your different sections. So 7 volunteer ambulance services, which provide EMT, basic care, Glenwood, Elmwood, Boyceville, Dallas, and Durand. Obviously, Dallas is not in Dunn County, but they provide service to, so this there is who is contracting with Dallas EMS in order to receive those services. So you get a lot of complexity. Obviously, you can see a little bit of Durand in there too. And that really does make sense. You know, from a response standpoint, you want the closest ambulance to be able to get to you. So these towns kind of work through identifying the best places. Although at some point, I think they do make decisions about it's easier to just contract with 1 rather than maybe contract with 2, whereas that might actually compromise a little bit of the response times. So there's a little section down on the bottom here that talks about the different types of providers that can take part in that. So you have emergency medical response, which has 49 hours of one-time training and 16 hours of biannual training. So this is really basic response. Get there, essentially, maybe that's providing CPR or something like that, but they're not going to be able to do much more than kind of basic first aid type work. They're also cheaper. So, and then you can see as that goes up, the amount of time and training, whether that's one time or annual, that needs to be put in. And I think it does go without saying, as you move down that path, the cost of those services or the cost of that employee goes up. So when you have your career ambulance services that are providing paramedics, it costs more than a service that would be using EMRs. So lots of different dynamics that kind of go into how those services are provided. 12 departments, bad slide, in the county. Once again, you have Menominee Fire and Rescue, same 2 colors, and then the lots of different volunteer fire departments around the areas. Little shocking numbers for everyone. So 41% of emergency services providers have reported that they are not staffed 24/7, 365 in the past 12 months. So as a statutory thing, like they have to do that, but they have reported that they can't, right? So this just comes down to staffing issues and how the dynamics of all of that work, having be able to pay people and get into that. And then some bigger numbers, as you may expect. That is a bigger issue in volunteer and rural areas than it is in urban or full-time areas. basic slide, not getting any better. Staffing is going down. There's not as many people doing this. This is true in a lot of industries, but is very much focused in this and in the law enforcement areas where it's just careers that people aren't necessarily interested in going towards, as well as along with that, you see cost increases that are happening in those particular areas. And then training is difficult to find. We're lucky here. CVTC provides it in Eau Claire, so we do have some of those services available. But and then the capital expenses, and I know this is one of the big thing. The cost of a fire truck is huge. Like, and so you get into a lot of places that have been running a fire truck for 30 years that are looking to replace it at 300, 400, 500% of what they had paid for it in the last time. And when that need comes in, that district then buys that and passes that cost along to the municipalities that are using their services. So these are some information provided by the town of Elk Mound, just as it relates to, I know we talk about our levy limits and our levies, and I'm sharing a town's bit of information with you, and we'll get to why that matters here in a second. But you can see in 2026, the ambulance service in the town of Elk Mound amounted to about 5% of their levy. In 2024, it was 28% of their levy. So think about that from a services provided and levy cap standpoint. They have to compromise something in order to do that because they're legally required to do this. So there's a compromise that happens, and that compromise is roads for the most part. So that's kind of one of the problems that the towns are faced with right now. That's kind of bringing this to light. Then you can see that from a fire standpoint, you actually don't necessarily see as dramatic of a change. And that comes down to how often are those calls a problem. But I will tell you that one of the big things that comes into the volunteer fire departments in general, people aren't volunteering to do things anymore. So the number of volunteers are going down. So as much as those are staffed right now, they're typically staffed by a population that is aging out of providing that, and they're not being replaced by the younger generation. So as that happens, volunteer fire departments go away, and we start looking more towards full-time ones, which are going to be more expensive to those towns, not to mention the response times going down. So here's the bleak picture of that. As we look at just the costs as it relates to their mill rates, the fire mill rate, because fire, they will actually levy for, whereas ambulances, you're typically contracting with a party, and those contracts are based on per capita. They're based on belly buttons, not parcels, right? Which is how most of our other ones are like fire and mill rate is all based on the number of parcels. So as you talk about that, you take a family of 5 living in a house, that is bigger than one person living in a house. And from a fire and from an ambulance standpoint, that's the number that matters to them because they don't respond to houses, they respond to people. So you can see those numbers, and you see a large disparity that happens there. Mainly these 3 that you see right here with a $40 per, those are villages that are providing their own services right now. So you have the Colfax Fire and Rescue. I don't know what the other names of them are, but they're paying increased costs. You do see the Menominee Rural Old and the Menominee Rural New. Menominee is ramping up their costs. For the longest time, they have not been necessarily, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but charging the municipalities that they serve. They haven't been increasing those rates as costs have gone up, and they're looking to actually kind of fix that. For those of you familiar with the solid waste situation in the county, same thing, right? So that is pushing a burden around a lot of the towns around Menominee that are facing some of those issues. All right, so what's happening now? So the Dunn County chapter of the Wisconsin Towns Association agreed to pursue a study And that was all started by the town of Elk Mound. Tony Christopherson had kind of led the efforts to be able to do that, which is why you saw the town of Elk Mound's data there. Tony also did present this to the Judiciary and Law Committee along with Garrett at UW Extension. Town of Elk Mound applied for an innovation planning grant. Just to be clear with that, Chris and I were involved in those and in helping them kind of go through that application process and kind of roped in UW Extension to assist. So the town did receive the innovation planning grant. So if you hear about the innovation funds, this was part of the biennial budget a couple of years ago. This is an innovation planning grant. So this is a grant to plan how you are going to apply for innovation funds. So it was a smaller amount, and the only eligible entities to apply for an innovation planning grant are municipalities under, I forget what, 5,000. So we can't. The town of Elk Mound can, and that's why they did. So they applied for that grant. They received that grant and have since contracted with a third party to do a study on EMS and fire in Dunn County. Just looking at what are the different recommendations that we can look at in order to provide this in a different way, potentially taking advantage of combining services. So the combining services is what would qualify you for an innovation grant. So it's kind of where they're looking at those types of things. Whether that's going to result in the use of an innovation grant or not, we'll see, but that's kind of the initial premise. I think we feel like it's less than likely, but it provided funding to do the study. So we went that route. So that provider that they worked with is now out gathering data from all of the providers in the county, including the towns and municipalities, which has its intricacies. So obviously any type of thing like this, we're asking for that data, people start to question what's going on. So part of why I'm here talking and part of why we brought this through other committees as well, to kind of get that word out. This is what we're doing. We're looking at what is a better way to do this because it's a failing system. All right, how's the county involved? They talked about that. So part of that was just kind of working with the different parties to be able to get everybody together to be able to move forward. We did tag UW Extension in to help with this, as they've been helping in other areas and have an area kind of set up specifically in working on this. Seen the presentations of CR&T and Judiciary and Law. Can't remember if there was one for HHS or not, but okay. And part of that reason is just to get the word out, but the other part is we do expect that likely any recommendations that come out of this are going to in some way, shape, or form involve the county and will be a decision that will need to be made by the county board. So we want to bring the county board along as all of these things are happening so that you can understand that and that you're well informed as those decisions come to pass. So the number one reason why we expect that to happen, here's another statute. I will read this one. The levy limit otherwise applicable under this section does not apply to the amount that a county levies in a year for countywide emergency medical system. Short version is EMS services are exempt from the levy limit at the county level. They are not exempt at the municipal level, but they are exempt at the county level. So as part of our state, whether that was an accident or that was intentional, they might be trying to get those services moved to the county as they enable that particular loophole. So that is something that we will, that's one of the reasons why we expect we're going to see county involvement in some of the recommendations that come forward. Other EMS options. So we don't know what the options are necessarily going to be other than the fact that these studies have been done otherwise in other areas. So it could just be nothing, everything's fine. We do our study and maybe some of the towns just do things differently. It may be that the county is going to levy and own and operate an ambulance service. It may be that the county levies in contracts with one provider to be able to provide that. Or it may be that the county levies in contracts with all of the existing providers, draws our lines and kind of just manages the money behind that. Right. So once again, a lot of these county levies things is kind of working around that levy limit that would exist in towns or the county. And then just a little bit of a summary, as I said, UW Extension has kind of been roped in here, and this is a statewide thing. So this is just a map to show you some of the different areas, different counties that have gone through this work and kind of where they have gone. So you can see there's county operated services in some areas. You can see our neighbors off to the east are planning for the county levy. So planning to make some of those different moves. So different options that different counties have taken on. We have the limit exception down on the bottom there. That's my basic summary of kind of what's going on. Obviously, a lot more to come out of that study as to what those recommendations will be. But yeah, any questions related to that? Thoughts or other items that you'd like to hear, because I'm presenting this again next week. So.
Thanks, Dan. That was very good. I'm just wondering what the timeline is on the completion of the recommendations.
Don't quote me on this, but my expectation would be we'd see that in the next 3 months. It's not going to be too much longer. Yeah. So lots of parties that need to get, you get into this and you're essentially looking at all the municipalities, all the fire districts, all the ambulance districts, like everybody kind of has to all get on the same page. So, or it doesn't work. So, yeah.
It's something that we should, if it's going to happen, the results are going to be in this year. It seems like it's something that we should incorporate into our comprehensive plan. So that's part of this whole service in general, the idea of the sort of collaboration between rural governments and the county makes a lot of sense.
And I would say in connecting the dots, because as we've learned, so if you just think about it right now, say, Township A is funding EMS services at the expense of roads, they could continue, they would have choices. They could lower their levy, like EMS could move to a county-wide EMS district and they could lower their levy, or they can repurpose that levy towards other needs within the township. So it's not it's not going to be any type of a cost savings to anyone. In fact, it will be a cost increase to the people in those townships. But it also is probably the cost of having those services available.
That's why it likely wouldn't be innovation grant eligible.
And that also, solving this problem is essential if we're going to be able, if people are going to be able and want to live in rural areas and small towns. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen.
Supervisor Headland and Supervisor Steen.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't been on the service for a few years, but did for 30 years. And there used to be quite a bit of cooperation amongst, Boyceville, Menominee, Glenwood City, Colfax, Sand Creek. Everybody always bailed in and helped out. But I know again, I was not planning on staying on for 30 years, but a lot of us ended up being there that long because of, like just you say, getting people, the younger generation, to either find the time or be willing to work as a volunteer firefighter or volunteer EMS worker. So is everybody kind of getting on board, I guess is my question.
Yeah. So as you talk about those cooperative agreements, and those are still in place and still followed, but the other side of that is it it's not necessarily equitable. Uh, so, so when you have a provider that a 911 call comes in and our 911 dispatchers call to the volunteer emergency response area, they don't respond. So then they have to go to the next call to that's a cooperative agreement. So now we're going to go to, let's just say, for instance, we're going to take Colfax Fire and Rescue is now going to take their ambulance and go respond out of their district to do that. There is now not an ambulance in Colfax. Well, Colfax has a cooperative agreement with Menominee. So then Menominee takes an ambulance and drives it over to Colfax so that Colfax has coverage. And now Menominee, they have coverage, but their coverage is compromised. It isn't as covered as it was previously been done. And now all of these people, to talk about how those payments are, right? This is Menominee now paying for all of those other services that are happening as other people are doing that. So there's some inequities that kind of fall into that. Like I said, they're cooperative agreements. They do this, that happens on a daily basis, but we saw a little bit of the disparity in cost to some municipalities versus others, and a lot of that is related to the cooperative agreements.
Yeah, effectively Menominee is backstopping everybody at considerable cost.
Yeah, there's the concept of mutual aid, but that would imply some mutuality. And some of the Menominee's data is, they're doing pretty much often 10-to-1 responses of mutual aid calls. So they're going out 10 times for every time that they need to call one entity in to meet their need. The additional piece that happens then is if Colfax goes out of their district to respond, Menominee goes to Colfax, and then Menominee gets called out. Sometimes then the volunteer on the fire side comes from another place to backfill Menominee.
Supervisor Steen.
Thank you. I just think if you look at the township's budgets, villages' budgets, and the city's budget, public safety is eating more and more of the budgets. And this is just designed to be the most cost-effective way, and it's a big change. And I have the advantage of being fairly old, and I can remember in my little community in the 70s, the fire whistle goes off and you'd see 10, 12 guys running down the street. All business owners, all volunteers. You don't see that anymore because most of the people work out of town. And so the landscape has changed, and what people want, nobody wants to pay taxes, but when they need an ambulance, they want one right now. And so this is some foreign concepts to what we had, but I think we have to work, and a very overused statement, think out of the box about how you can deliver these things. And some of our southern states, I'll just use school districts as an example. They don't have local school districts, they have county school districts. It's just a different way of approaching their situation. So I'm hopeful that some good results can come from this. And Tony's done a lot of work on this, and the fact of the matter for him is that whatever they pay now, if it's freed up and they could pay that to pave some roads, basically. Thank you.
Okay.
Point well taken.
So feeling very old now. Thanks, Dan. If I don't see anything else, we will
I was just staying up for the next one.
plunge on into the exciting rules discussion.
Good afternoon, everybody. You all remember that last month I covered rules 1 and 2. Based on the feedback from those rules, I have made changes to those, which I'll present in a future meeting. Today I'm covering 3 and 4, and next month I plan on covering the appendices. And if people think time will permit, oh, thank you. Time will permit, I'll also cover the changes I've made to 1, 2, 3, and 4 at that point. That's my plan going forward. But anyway, rule number 3, and we did make a few more changes to these, which will be on the screen compared to what was in your packet. So you may want to occasionally look at that. I'll try to point out the ones I remember that were changed. Dan, you gonna make it larger? Just as last time, if it's just black and white, that means it's from the model rules. I highlighted any changes in red. And I tried to cite where we got that from, basically. In terms of the county board chair change, we added in the second paragraph of current rule 2.05. Just basically to explain the further duties, and we felt explain how he interacts with the various committees. In the second paragraph, we added besides the board chair that the county manager or the board chair's designee can serve as a spokesperson. That is actually in current chapter 5, the county manager's duties. And of course, certainly the board chair can choose somebody to speak on behalf of the county. And the last paragraph is just to match our current process in terms of what committee the board chair chairs.
Can I just back up this section right here? I know it's something that we talked about the last time.
Thanks, Dan. I was gonna.
That is word for word. That is the current ordinance.
So that is what it is. The red is what it is effectively right now. Because the ex officio voting member is in our current, it's spread across several different places in our rules, but all of that information, this is the condensed version. Your concern about quorum is part of that. We could very easily take that out. This is just to get it all in one place. This is by no means final. This is just trying to get everything sorted. But if people are interested in pulling out the quorum rule because we are no longer operating under that in that environment with the opportunity for electronic meetings, I'm all for it. I think that's an entirely sensible change. Supervisor Kinnear.
I'm just a little confused that that's different than what I have here in my packet.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So
I'm,
the packet was as the rules were.
no,
Yeah, no, that's why I was saying the packet was as the rules were when it was sent out. This is a dynamic document, so this is the updated document as it currently stands up there.
We, based on all of that, yeah, we met on Monday. So based on the kind of the feedback from the last time, we felt it to be best to provide to you what the current Dunn County ordinance states. So this is word for word our current rules.
Does that answer the question you were?
well, I was confused as the
Yeah,
two
no,
of them.
it's
And this is something that we probably want to decide if we want to keep it or not
right.
sometime.
Well, before we pass this whole package, so we'll have one more bite at this with the third section. And then I think at that point, we'll have a discussion about anything that's come up as contentious and try and get it all sorted out and settled. And I know Supervisor Wilsey has some comments there on the ethics part of our rules, so we'll get to it. Okay, back to you.
All right. Well, page 2, I did not do any changes to that. So that is straight from the model rules. Which, of course, if you have concerns about those, please speak. Okay, moving on to Rule 3.02, the vice chair. The first section of that is a rewording of the model rules, make it a little more like our current rule as well, frankly. And it points out that the vice chair shall serve as the chair should the position become vacant. The first part of that change, we went with incapacity and inability to serve as opposed to other reasons.
Yeah, so I'll address this briefly. So the way that our rules currently stand, if the chair is out of town, that's the committee chair, the board chair, whatever, the vice chair of that body has essentially serves in all the capacities of the chair. But with, again, modern communications, it can often be solved. So like with agenda, there's no reason I can't set agenda when I'm out of town, or you can't set agenda when you're out of town. So this gives the chair a little more control over things like setting the agenda. So it's instead of I'm not here, I can't serve that particular function. Clear enough? Great.
And then part B, the change there is just to match what our current process is as opposed to what was in the model rules. 303, I basically wanted the part in red is it matches the wording in 3.02 on the previous page. And just to make it clear, it's incapacity and the ability for a committee chair. If they're just out of town, they can still be chair of the committee.
You can also designate your vice chair to run the meeting while you're gone. And for the board chair, we definitely want the person in the room running the meeting. Supervisor Vogel.
Do we need anything about chairs being members of the executive committee anywhere, or is that somewhere else?
It's somewhere else. So
Okay.
all chairs are members of the executive committee, but within the definition of the executive committee.
It's Appendix B.
Appendix B. Okay. Jim?
I think we're ready for the next page.
Yep.
The top change, the 4.01 change isn't that surprising. Committee as a whole, we covered this. It's actually in Rule 2.01D from the last meeting. So it's kind of hard to reflect back on that, but it's to be consistent with 1 and 2 that we discussed last month.
Supervisor Morehouse?
No, I just wanted.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I'm fine.
Now, this is different than what's in your packet. So if I suggest looking at the screen. We kind of hemmed and hawed about this one. And in the end, what we're proposing at least is that we use what our current rule 2.075 2 through 9 for remote attendance at meeting. We just felt the rules are better. It was very comprehensive compared to what was in the model rule. So.
and I'll note, so this version is essentially the discussion we had in 2023. So when we adjusted our virtual attendance policy just 2 years ago, we had a considerable discussion, and this was the end result of that discussion. And since the board is largely the same board as 2023, we felt that the simplest thing was to adopt what the board has already adopted. Oh, Supervisor Wilsey.
Thank you. Had a question on the camera on for the entirety of the attendance. Do you know, or is it that change?
That I believe is in the deleted part.
Okay, all right.
And part 1 wasn't put in here because part 1's just a definition section, so it was irrelevant.
The camera piece was in the model rule, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That change.
Yeah.
Okay.
We eliminated the model rule section and put in what our own ordinance had said.
I think you can skip down. Yeah, it just shows that we deleted the model rule. All right, in terms of the order of business, honestly, it's for both committee and for the board. It's what we do right now. So showing that I deleted out what was in the model rule. It's not that much different than what the model rule was, but I just wanted to keep consistency with what we do now. It seems to work. And that applies to standing committees as well. The only addition is to letter E, consideration of resolutions, and that red section is added from current rule 2.14.
Largely because so much of our work comes out of the standing committees as opposed to being proposed by the equivalent of the exec committee in another county. Many of them, all of the resolutions essentially come out of that. Since so many of our resolutions come directly from the standing committee, it's important for us to maintain who did the work and where it's coming from.
There was nothing edited for 4.05 except for taking out a section from that, and it was edited to match what we currently do.
We didn't want to become the,
Phone police.
the
Yeah.
cell phone police.
We just don't make me notice, don't make noise.
4.06, the first three changes that I mentioned on the right-hand side, it was a section in the model rules that was in brackets. Basically, it could go in or it could not go in. The model rules left it up to the drafter, and we put those three in because we felt it was appropriate and it matched our current process. And then the larger change toward the bottom of that page is just a verbatim quote of our current rule 2.205.
I highlighted the section on the top here. That is new. That doesn't exist anywhere other than I believe it was in a model rule.
It was.
And we
We had been,
wanted to float the idea.
yeah, I believe that we essentially used it as practice. Because I know Steve Rasmussen enforced that at one point.
Just wanted to point it out because it
Yeah.
didn't exist before.
Well, and I think it's worth noting the requires 2/3 vote chunk of red there. So we already have the tool available to end debate. It's a privileged motion, simple majority. This is from the 2/3 vote bid is essentially from the model rules. I think it's designed to prevent filibuster. So if 2/3 of the board says, hey, you have now talked way too much, we're done, someone can move, and we're going to end debate for this individual. So it doesn't shut down the discussion, but it does shut down someone who's filibustering. It's not the Gary Steen rule, I promise.
And the bottom change actually goes on to the next page. So if you want to scroll down so that you can get the full flavor of it.
And that was also taken from our current ordinance. We liked the language related to keeping debate in good whatever.
Well, and
decorum.
this focuses on it in the positive frame as opposed to some of the language later on from the model rules essentially saying, hey, don't do these things. This is a hey, be a good member. Supervisor Kinnear.
Just something to consider in the future where it says, if I can see it again, questioning the motives. Motives is different than questioning reasoning.
Oh, yeah.
And somehow that can get mixed up in people's minds, but I can question and say, I think there's 3 reasons, costs, environment, and personnel. Those are 3 reasons, and I don't think the other 2 should count. Only cost should count. So I'm not questioning anybody's, what's the word again up there? Motives, but I am questioning their reasoning process. Not questioning, I'm disagreeing.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's a very respectful way of phrasing it. We actually have currently under our rules, you're not allowed to question the motive of other county board members. You can't say, oh, I think Supervisor John Johnson is voting for this because he owns a bait shop and this is that's currently already against our rules.
Right. But I could say, I see that your main objective here is to keep personnel. And I disagree with that. I don't think that's a good way to do it. I think you should do something else.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's a fine line.
You're done reading that section, we can probably go down and there's just the voting, there's a slight change in that. And it's just to mimic or to match what is currently done. No changes on the last page of this page.
This was the piece originally that had the rules of decorum, and if you see, they're all kind of talking, shouting, outbursts, clapping. These are for the public, but these were also, I think, reflected in the board part or some version of them. So we're like, yeah, we just want people to be respectful and nice to each other.
Well, and I think it's I think it's an expression of respect for your constituents to conduct your manner,
Mhm.
stuff in that manner.
So in these rules, I think as this section is where Andy Phillips really was talking about making sure that you have this because these are public meetings. The public is welcome to be there, but you get to define the rule set. And if you don't, you don't get to make it up at the meeting. So that's really where putting these in place is having the ability to do that.
And you will all be familiar with the comment rules, which is kind of how this whole path started about 7 months ago.
And that was just a question that I had, the number 3, germane and on the meeting agenda. Yeah,
Yep.
okay, and that's new.
That's new.
Yeah, okay.
Currently, we are one of the 7 states in Wisconsin that allows open public comment. And it is both Wisconsin municipalities and Wisconsin Counties Association are like, this is a terrible, terrible idea for largely for liability reasons, but. Supervisor Quinn.
Thank you. So, it strikes me that we have a rule that says that in a meeting where where the topic has been subject to a previous public hearing, that will not be an eligible topic for public comment at that meeting, which makes sense. But just to note that it also then puts a lot more responsibility on us to design a public hearing process accessible to people.
Yeah, and that particular rule was instituted, I think, about 6 years ago, maybe, because we were having people essentially coming in and trying to get a second bite at the apple.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that exposed us to significant legal liability risk.
Sorry, I just want to make a note there, Jim, because I believe number 3, we did not want that to apply to committees. Sorry, they should still be germane, but the agenda item, am I correct there? That you could make public comment off agenda at a committee meeting, but not at the full board, or was
Well-
that not the intent?
We had a discussion about allowing it specifically the legislative agenda committee to give, so that there was a specific venue for generalized comments, but probably not for all of the committees. For the same reason that we don't want to have it at the board, it presents us with liability issues. But we did definitely want to allow the legislative agenda committee to continue to have open public comment essentially at the will of the chair of that committee, so that we could have that as a venue for people to come in.
So we should put that exception in there, or you'd have to waive the rules.
Yeah.
Eight and 9 are additions. Number 8, based on current practice.
No,
No.
but it's part of the model rules for comments that we were in the process of adopting when we decided we were going to redo the whole rule set.
Okay. I will correct that comment then.
Based on current intent.
And then number 9 is a verbatim quote from current rule 2.221B.
Everybody still awake?
Letter C is the addition to that is from current rule 2.08.
Supervisor Morehouse.
And I don't mean to speak for the PRND chair, but, um, there are frequently public members at PRND, and sometimes the chair has invited, participation outside of public comment. Can you explain how that might work? Is that,
Sure. So the top sentence, unless specifically requested by the chair of meeting, that would be that the chair can request at the meeting at the time. So the chair has that authority.
okay,
And then the bottom essentially is, if the rest of the committee wants this
Object.
particular person not to be included essentially as part of the discussion, then any member can, I would like to object to this, you hold a vote.
I just wanted to make sure that the discretion of the chair
Yep,
was incorporated here. You're welcome.
that's, we actually had this at the top part, we were saying, this is the Tom Quinn rule.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It's important. I mean, I know at Highway, we've had a couple of instances where someone is coming in and it's gotta be a dialogue with them because we're trying to do, for example, transfer a former gravel pit to a new entity and third parties and all of that. Is that?
Good.
All right. I think that I know of 3 or 4 rules over the course of the years that have an unofficial name, and I think we're probably best leaving them unofficial. But I appreciate the thought. I would be happy to have that conversation with you when we're not being recorded.
4.08, there's no changes from the model rule there. Limited changes to 4.09, release A. There was a section C. Oh, I'll let you catch up, sorry. There was initially a different, there, C that talked about recognizing people who retired, that they have to qualify or be fully vested under WRS, and it didn't seem to make sense. You can recognize whoever you want to recognize. Skipping a page, sorry. That letter E, that is just current rule 2.206. And lastly, 4.10, the only thing I added was one of those bracketed suggested rules from the model rules, members elect. That is all that. I can tell you, I took all the feedback from the last meeting and I made changes to those. So, I mean,
Yeah, you've been
ask
doing really good work
away.
on
This has been a very collaborative effort. This isn't the Jim McMenemy rules. This is a lot of people involved with this. Well, don't. I'll be blamed then.
So why don't you ask the question?
Yeah, I have a question. How, I don't know if I missed it. How does the body call for a roll call vote? From the board for the chair?
That's, it's not in the rules of the board, it's in Robert's rules. There are certain times where roll call votes are required by statute, but for the most part, we don't define the process to do that. It exists in Robert's rules.
Yeah, so our rules, state statute, we have to follow our own rules. And then anything that isn't covered under those two things fall under Robert's rules, and Robert's rules allow anyone to call for a roll call vote for any vote, so.
Thank you.
And that is in 4.01 of your packet.
I figured it was worth having that conversation out loud. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dan.
I have, except for correcting my one comment, I didn't get anything except maybe three you might want to talk about afterward, but
Yeah, this is. I think by and large, these are pretty sensible. And we, we will argue about the few that need arguing about when we get there. So that concludes item 6. On to item 7, reports, resolutions, and ordinances to the county board from the executive committee, 2025 budget amendments, ENS and health department. Y'all have seen these a lot. Does anyone have any questions? All right, you have the resolution before you. I need a motion in a second. Supervisor Steen moves, Supervisor Morehouse seconds. Any speaking to the resolution? All right, you have it before you. One more request for debate. Hearing none, we are ready to vote. You have the resolution before you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to item 8, review of reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board from the standing committees. A, legislative committee resolution on land and water conservation funding. You all just went through that, so any further questions? Okay. 8.
No question. I'm making a motion.
Oh, don't need a motion because
Withdraw, trying to make a motion.
8B, Highway Committee Resolution recognizing Work Zone Awareness Week. I think this one is pretty obvious, but I'm sure Randy or I could answer any questions you had about it. All right. 9, reports from the standing committees. Let's start with Ann. Supervisor Vogel.
The Facilities Committee met March 26th, and the meeting was led by Supervisor Larry Bjork. I watched the recording. There was a Fair Board report by Deb Gottliebson, and then Scott Nabafeld had a great report on facilities and parks. And there was a short discussion about Verigy, the solar and geothermal project, and there's a meeting on April 14th to discuss like the final kind of report and plan. And our next meeting is April 23rd at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Supervisor Vogel. Supervisor Bauer.
CR&T met on March 18th in room 54, called the meeting to order at 4:30. Area Extension had all their reports, and there were a few questions there, but they're all maintained at the meeting. Louisa gave a good report on reading, what reading does to kids, children. It's very important to read to them, and he said some parents have a problem with reading their kids because they don't read so well themselves, that they do have a little trouble. She went on to say that they should read anyway. I mean, I'm just telling them you're making mistakes. You're doing the best you can. Just read to your kids. She also went in, she has the inmates read to their kids so that they get a chance to do that as well in the jail. She had a saying that there's no app for your lap. So that was kind of a good little saying that she said there. The day of caring in October 2024 had 150 volunteers, a lot of them from the county. It's a lot of pictures there. A lot of you guys were there. Some of you are there. They had 16,726 total value hours, which is pretty good for those guys, 150 people. Adam Aquila spoke Dunn County business expansion plan, and that is in the approval stages within the partnership entities. Adam is currently writing a grant that will be focused on childcare and housing within the Dunn County. He also applied from a grant from the Economic Development Corporation, but he did not get that one, so. Doug Mell continues to write for communications in Dunn County. We recently published an article sharing information about the electronic recycling that Dunn County is going to be doing here on May 1st. Hope you guys get that posted out to everybody in your townships, because that's kind of nice. We do a lot of roadside pickup in our township, and we find a lot of stuff in the ditches that could just well go into recycling, but um, that's about it. Our next meeting is April 15th, 4:30 right here.
Thank you, Supervisor Bauer. Supervisor Prochnow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Transit and Highway met this morning. Transit, I was supposed to do an update on the electrical buses. The update is, there is no update. They've reached out, and they won't return anything. So we have no idea. So we are looking into maybe, I don't know, see what our next options are, since this has been going on for 10, 15 years, whatever. It's crazy. So anyway, we are trying to figure out what, if we get any response ever back from them, but so far, nothing. Highway, county road bans are coming off Monday. Field operations, they're starting to sweep all the intersections and hills and stuff for the salt sand, so motorcycles don't have an issue. Started some patching with our new patcher and stuff. That's been working really well. Equipment, we got our second truck fabricated by ourselves, Dunn, which has been great. Fabrication is out over a year right now. So we are looking at fabricating our two next trucks. Two of our next trucks, two are going down to Universal, but two are thinking about gonna do ourselves again. Projects going on down by Irvington. That road will, I think they're gonna start on Monday on that County Road D. That's kind of like a 70-day project. That's all gonna be detoured, just to give you a heads up. But I think it's Monday is when they're supposed to start. Had to wait for the road bands to get off, so. County Road D up by Jake's, that project's going on. We are still trying to get some land contracts for some easements and stuff signed. As soon as we get all that done, we're hoping to be able to start sometime middle of the summer on that project. I don't know, maybe Luke will talk about that, but in safety, we did find out that there are gonna be two roundabouts put on 25 at John Deere and at County Road B, both County Road BB, I guess. That's not until 2030 or 2031, but they are in the process of actually doing some roundabouts on that road. Slowing traffic down and getting less accidents. We also had that grant for Dunn County Safety, which was with St. Croix County and Eau Claire County. We have gotten that back now. We had a great presentation at the safety meeting. We haven't dove into it too much. Dustin is still going through that. It just highlights all the problem areas in our county and what we should fix and make it safer for everybody. And then mowing, spraying this year, we are actually gonna do a little bit different. We're gonna spray the south side, basically, of the county and mow the north. And we're gonna switch that back and forth each year, see how that works versus spraying all and mowing all. Oh, and the other thing in transit I forgot is we are gonna start hopefully in June, doing rides from the, basically there's gonna be four quadrants split by 94 and 25. Every Tuesday, we're gonna try to hit each one of those quadrants, where it's on a pilot program right now. Like I say, if they call, we will pick them up in that quadrant on a Tuesday. And then the next quadrant's the next Tuesday. We're gonna try that this summer, see how it goes. So that's the other thing on transit. Otherwise, our next meeting is I think May 14th or something. That's it.
Wow. Just a second. Supervisor Steen has a.
Yeah, Supervisor Prochnow, I wonder if you could ask Dustin, they're gonna redo Highway 40 next year, you know, from 29 all the way over to M.
Mhm.
And as you come down B,
Oh, yeah.
okay, and then as you look to the south, there's that dip.
Mhm.
And if you're there in a car and a car comes over the hill, you can't see it when it's in the dip.
Right.
I wonder if, I broached that subject to the DOT and they said, well, there's been no fatalities there. But they're gonna be redoing the road anyway, and I'd say if they, you know,
Cut a little bit off.
would you have Dustin
Yep.
give us his thought on that, and maybe we could get a little more horsepower and, because it'd be a cheap fix. You're just gonna cut the hill a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't take much, but that
No.
is very true.
Yeah.
It's hard to see in that area.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you Supervisor Prochnow. Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a little longer than mine. You got more going on maybe, that you can see anyway. I'm doing a report for the neighbors of Dunn County. We have a new head clinical mentor, Rebecca Prodlock, took that job over. She has been working there for quite some time. I know she'll do a good job. COVID is still making a difference as far as being able to admit people. If you have a positive test, whether it's a resident or a worker in a household, you can't admit to that household. But that's let up a little bit, at least when we met. I'm not sure what's happening currently, but it is getting a little better. Facilities, Scott gave a nice report, and they do a really good job over there, keeping stuff up and doing the work themselves rather than hiring it out. And we still have one household closed and one partially full. Things are moving along good. We will meet again in the 27th next month.
Thank you, Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Headland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee on Administration met last Thursday, March 27th, 3:00 here in this room. We conducted our first part of our meeting was very normal business. Reports from all our departments that report to us, including we always review their financial current financial status in terms of budgets. Along with that, we received a notice of an equity pay change for one of the members of the human resources staff. And I brought it up because that had gotten out and somebody questioned it because it's a fairly new position. And so, and it's a fairly good raise, but I wanted to explain because I knew that it would be explained. And it very much was. The pay increase basically was about an 8.25% increase, 3 steps. But also we had created a new position to this in a training manager in human resources. And of course, people look around and say, why, rebuild the wall when you can watch somebody else do it, show you how. And so we were showing everybody how well this was working out. And so consequently, other people in the area are doing it and really set a higher standard of pay than what we were paying our current staff member. And so it became common sense. A good way to lose a good staff member is to let the competition steal them away from you. So we did, we're glad to hear that that was noted, and it was, I think, very worthwhile. Want to keep good current staff. Along with that, we did hear from Beata and a report on what she reported here earlier about policy changes. We covered capital improvements, credit card policies, debt management policies, and internal audit policies. And all of those things are basically things, like you said, that were brought up even by, when our audits were covered and by the firms that noticed we could institute some improvement. And we really, I think we're well received by the committee. They're doing a good job and creating some good, sound direction as to where those important issues need to be addressed and how we're going to address them for the future. Beyond that, our next meeting will be April 24th here in this room at 3:00. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Headland. Supervisor Morehouse.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health and Human Services Board always meets directly after admin, so we met on March 27th. The Veteran Service Office is getting a small increase in their VSO operating grant. It's $733, but in a small budget, it makes quite a difference. And we had as we often do, had a conversation about a veteran whose claim has been pursued since 2018, was finally awarded 100% disability and will be receiving retroactive benefits. And it's just a testament to the work of Greg and Jessica, which is sort of unending. We did have a conversation. Greg has not experienced any problems in processing of documents or claims yet. And is pretty optimistic that he's not going to. However, Dr. Hall on our board has working relationships with a number of the doctors at the Minneapolis VA, most of whom have been terminated. So, that's one of the things that we're gonna be watching. Public Health updated us on the measles epidemic. It's now in 15 jurisdictions and continuing. There will be a $40,000 clawback in federal COVID money from the health department. And again, we're watching to see what the changes and the staff reductions in the Federal Health and Human Services Department, in what ways they'll affect the state and then therefore the county. We did, on a positive note, look at the National County Health Rankings, where Dunn County is faring slightly better on wellness indices than the average county in Wisconsin and better than the national average. So this is all good. We did have a perhaps overly lengthy conversation, both because it affects both DHS and the health department, about the government oversight, accountability, and transparency request for 5 years of lots and lots of documents. And that's proceeding according to the advice of the Wisconsin Counties Association. We had a report on the new strategic plan for the Department of Human Services. Talked a little bit about the fact that there is some new case law that is requiring us to have licensed psychiatrists review client evaluations. That's not the process that's been followed in the past. And we have trouble finding mental health practitioners in the first place. So that's going to be a problem. Both the health department and DHS will be returning money to the levy, but for the Department of Human Services dealing with a very expensive long-term placement, don't expect that to continue in subsequent years. We reviewed vouchers and approved the budget amendment, which we saw today, and we meet next on April 24th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Supervisor Steen.
Yes, Supervisor Morehouse, I think that $40,000 clawback was destined for immunizations, correct?
Yes, largely
Yeah, thank you.
COVID follow-up.
Mr. Chair. One question.
Supervisor Bauer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the measles thing, I mean, I looked at the national map, Wisconsin yet had not had any, if I remember right. I mean, I think most of the people are unvaccinated that are getting it, but Wisconsin is mostly, do they have to have the shot before they get into school anyway,
May I
right?
respond?
Please.
Oh,
We did talk about that last month. So the herd immunization rate is 95%. Dunn County is at like 85%. And the various school districts are in various levels of, like Boyceville is at 95%. So yes, in the outbreaks in Texas and some of the other states, those are largely unvaccinated people. But the only way to really stop this is to stop all of the contacts and to up the immunization rates. When you get to 95%, you're good. Otherwise, it can continue to spread, and it very likely will.
I mean, as a kid back when I was growing up, I mean, if a neighborhood had measles or mumps, everybody went to them and got it and just got it over with,
Right.
I know that don't work anymore.
Apparently not. I mean, this is like a 20-year history of vaccination hesitancy, vaccination refusal, and what I think our public health department would call misinformation. But it has consequences, obviously. You're welcome.
All right. Supervisor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Planning, Resource and Development Committee has met a couple times. We reviewed the normal course of business, did a repurchase agreement on an in-rim property that had been foreclosed on and taken title by the county. We sold it back to the original landowners. We had actions on some zoning and variance requests. And as usual, excellent staff reports. Tammy Traxler reported on the status of the comprehensive plan. As of the April 7th deadline, we have an online survey that's gone out, and as of that date, we had a fairly low, disappointing return rate, let's say. So we'll find out what the final rate is. But there'll be other surveys that will be mailed out. One's going out to all the ag landowners and other opportunities. She also reviewed the key sort of element in getting input, which is a series of focus groups that we're going to have on various topics and with various stakeholders. And we're going to talk about what those should be, if we should add some, what some possible options for recruiting people to be on them are. And that'll happen over the next 6 months or so. I guess that was about it. Our next meeting is April 16th, next Wednesday.
Thank you, Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Wilsey.
Thank you, Chair. So we met March 24th, 25, and had staff reports. We had emergency management, medical examiner, and sheriffs at our regular board meeting, so nothing new there. Nothing real new, so I just picked out a couple things that I thought were interesting. The CJCC said if you are arrested for a felony or a misdemeanor or violent offense, your DNA is on file. I guess I never knew that. And then courts, we had one jury trial in February and one in March, and that was it. And then our next meeting is April 28th on 2025 on a Monday.
Thank you, Supervisor Wilsey. That concludes reports of committee. Supervisor Steen, you had something from?
Yeah, I'd like to, the Wisconsin Counties Utility Tax Association will be meeting this Friday in Portage, 10 o'clock in the morning. That tax association is our big goal for the counties is energy storage. How do we pursue that, and how do we get the state to share more of the money that they get paid? And prior to me being on this committee, because we didn't have any solar in Dunn County, it wasn't really a big deal. But all of a sudden, it's getting to be a big deal. And so our last meeting was January 24th, and so I'll give you an update when I get back. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Steen.
Supervisor
Hedlund.
I have something I forgot, I'm sorry. I got a message that from the meeting that took place, and there is going to be a change in the revolving fund that's been in place for CDBG, funding for home renovation. The funds that we locally have here that we partner up with Chippewa County, excuse me, to administer will all have to be sent back, and they will become part of a regional ask. In the past, people first choice was to go to the local, which we had of our own little region. And then if they couldn't get there, or the funds were used up, they could go to the regional. Now they'll all be at the regional, and that is actually it was under a state regulated formula that this never took place. The money went back. So they are now enforcing that, and those dollars will still be available, but there'll be people will actually have to apply to that regional office.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Hedlund. I don't think we've got anything else. Our next meeting date will be May 14th. I will see you all here, and we are adjourned.
Actually, it's a good, what is it, it's a grant
Mhm.
through Kubota. And I was wondering if I could apply for